All right, welcome everybody. How's everybody doing? I hope you're having a good Friday. It's Tyler Clary here with Coach Ben Lee once again. This is another edition of hashtag FFT Live presented by Fitter and Faster Swim Camps. Last week we worked on backstroke and we talked about a lot of different aspects of backstroke technique, and we're going to be doing the same type of thing today, except for with freestyle, of course. As people stream in, I'd like to remind everybody, please don't spam. What we're trying to do is give you as much content and value as is possible while pools are closed down. And the last thing that we want is for people to spam and take away from the presentation. So please don't spam. If you do, I'll ban you. It's that simple. Also, we're going to be announcing the winners of our giveaway at the end of today's webinar. So make sure you stick around until the very end. We're giving away 3 gift cards. The gift cards are based on the number of people that we have in the webinar at the very end here. So make sure you stick around until the end. That being said, Ben, talk to us a little bit about some of the things that we might work on in the pool.
Yeah, I think hips are a really important part of freestyle. A lot of time we see either late hips or we see late breathing in freestyle, both of which contribute to how the hand enters and how you set up for the catch. So those are some things that we'll see Tyler demonstrate, and then we'll walk through some video of, so you can see the difference between what a late catch or a late breath or a late hip looks like, and what an on-time.
All right, great. I'm going to hop in, and I'm just going to swim a little bit and kind of warm up a little bit more. But what you may notice me do are a couple of different drills, and I want you to pay close attention to my head. So last week we talked about how there's like kind of a rope connection between your nose and your belly button in backstroke. In freestyle, it's the same type of idea, except the rope is connected in 2 different areas. So last week, when we were doing breaststroke, backstroke, we were talking about the rope connection between here and here. Now, because we're doing freestyle, that rope connection is going to be on the back of my head and in my tailbone. So if I look up, there's going to be slack in that rope back there, and that's going to cause my hips to sink. They'll go really low. But if I really extend my neck and tuck my chin in, that's going to pull on this rope and bring my hips right up to the surface. So let's watch that a little bit, and Ben's going to talk through some of the things I'm doing well and maybe some of the things I'm not doing so well. What was that?
Yeah, actually show right now.
Yep. What? Okay. Oh, yeah. Ben, can you minimize this screen? So the top right hand of the video. There you go. Cool.
There you go. Now you guys should have
doubles.
both views, one from the side. So notice how as he lifts his head up, his hips start to sink. And we want to start to pull that string from the back of the head to the hips. And as he lays down, notice how the hips start to rise back up. He's able to get a slightly longer reach. A good way, if you guys are looking at the side view, is you can see how close he's pulling to the front bar of this pool. So when he lifts his head, Tyler, lift your head up, he starts to create a lot of drag, and now he starts to get pushed back a little bit more. He can't hold water as well. Lays his head back down. Now he can set up that bar.
So it should have been very, very clear when my head was up really high versus when my head was down low and into the correct position. And what Ben, I think, was talking about, obviously it was hard for me to hear him, but what he was talking about was the amount of drag that I had on my body when my head was in those 2 different positions. So thinking about your body kind of being like a torpedo again, we want our bodies to be piercing through the water like this, imagining my hand is my body in the water. If my head is down and my neck is extended in this position, that's going to allow my body to pierce through the water just like this. So you're only able to see the very front of my torpedo. So it's only the very top of my body that's causing water resistance. If I lift my head up like this, it's going to cause my hips to sink again. And now this whole surface, instead of just the very top of the torpedo, is causing me to slow down. So I'm actually, Ben, can you speed up the machine just a little bit?
Yeah, and before we get into it, and for those of you that have attended a Fitter Faster camp, you guys know that we spend a lot of time talking about body line and streamline at the start of every camp. And the same principles of why we apply it there apply here, because water wants to sit there and bounce around and swirl if you give it the opportunity, and it's extremely dense. And so when Tyler dropped his head back down and straightened that cord in the back, he allowed himself to present as little resistance as possible so that water could flow over instead of swirling around or instead of bouncing around in between the head and the ears and the biceps on a streamline.
So let's speed it up and go to split screen again. So again, we're going to speed up the machine a little bit, and it should be even more clear to you, and maybe you can see the split screen view a little bit better. But when my head comes up, you can see a bigger wave behind my hips, and you can tell that I have to actually move my arms faster in order to be able to keep up with the machine. But when I put my head down and into the proper alignment, my hips are going to pick up, and it'll be a lot smoother and easier for me to keep up with the machine at the exact same speed. Here we go.
So this is a 100 100-yard pace. So when his head is up, notice how he has to really force that finish to lay down. But now he's able to be a lot more relaxed. Just flicks that wrist like he's trying to splash someone behind him. And the leg right to that next stroke. Back to the heads up. His arms pulling to fight through to get back to that surface. He's having to exert a lot more energy down here at the bottom. And you can see when he lays down again. So you really had to work for the base of that stroke. Like your hand was buried at the bottom of that.
So a lot of times we see, wrong view, top right. So a lot of times we see swimmers who are trying to look where they're going in freestyle, and I want to know from the people in chat whether or not you think you're one of the people that look where you're trying to go, or if you point the very top of your head where you're trying to go. I'd love to hear from you. And the reason why I want to know is because that's one of the things that we see all the time. And swimming is one of those sports which is a little bit weird in that you don't ever want to look where you're trying to go. In fact, if you do look where you're trying to go, you're probably doing it wrong. So when your coaches tell you, look straight down at the bottom of the pool, yeah, guilty, I do that. A lot of people are saying that they do it. So the reason why your coach is trying to tell you to look at the bottom of the pool is because they're trying to get this head position that we're talking about. So when your coach tells you to do that, they're not just trying to tell you to do that because they want you to run into the wall. Some of them might. But the reason why is because they're trying to get your hips up into line. So now that we've got like a really basic body position set up, what I'm going to do is a kick drill. So we're going to take away the arms completely. So all I'm going to do is flutter kick with my hands at my side just like this. And what I'm going to do is pick up my head and drop my head just like I was doing while I was swimming. And you should be able to tell, again, even though the machine's going slower now, that it's a lot more difficult for me to keep up at this speed if my head is up because I'm causing all sorts of drag with my chest now. But when I drop my head into line, it's only the very top of my head and only the very top of my shoulders that are causing me to slow down. So let's just kind of check out what that looks like.
Before we do, let's have you turn sideways from the camera. So you want to think like you have a rubber band or a string attached to the top of his head here. So it's helping you grow. Taller objects, longer objects move faster through the water.
We don't want to hunch down like this. We want to try to elongate as
much as we notice can. How he's growing his line here. If he breaks his line, now we start to have things tumble around, or if he breaks that line here, same thing. So let's go back into split screen view. And you should be able to really noticeably see that hip drop. When he lays out and you see the upper back, you start to see more of his back become flat. When you dry, notice how the water rushes around and over instead of crashing and tumbling right around in his hips.
So we know that a lot of you aren't able to get into the pool right now. right? How many of you, I want to know how many of you are either able to get in the pool or if you're unable to get in the pool. And I'm willing to bet that most of you don't have the ability to get in the pool right now. Now, first, this period of time is going to end. We're going to get back in the pool probably within the next couple of months. Now, what can you do between now and then to make yourself get better while you're out of the pool? And what Ben just talked about, I think, is one of those things that you can actually practice in front of the mirror. So we talked about sort of imagining that you're being pulled from the very top of your head. So what you can do is you can stand right in front of your mirror and look at yourself as you try to imagine being pulled from the top of your head. So you'll be able to tell, like right now I'm a little bit more relaxed. I'm just kind of standing like I normally would. But if I'm trying to extend like I would in an actual freestyle swimming position, you can tell that I'm getting just a little bit taller. I'm just extending through the top of my head. You can also do that from the side. So stand there, just kind of relax, and then extend to the top of your head, and then check by looking at the mirror this way. And I also want you to be checking your lower back. So some people may extend like this and feel like they're getting taller, but you can tell there's a curve in my lower back right now. What you want is to keep your core tight, almost like someone's punching you in the stomach. You want to be bringing your belly button into your lower back to get rid of that arch and extend to get that height while you're still staying straight with your body. If you think about it, once again, I talk about a torpedo all the time. A torpedo is very straight. A torpedo is not shaped like a banana. There's a reason for that. Bananas are slow. They're very slow fruit. We want to be fast. So you have to make sure that you're getting rid of that curve in your body by extending your, by engaging your core and getting your lower back to pop out almost like this. So this is relaxed. This is with an engaged core. And this is trying to extend to the top of my head as much as possible.
And I love that Tyler talked through all those details, guys, because a lot of times in practice, yeah, we do drills. We take time out of each main set to do a little bit of technical work, but sometimes with the course of a season, it's really hard to carry those things into strokes when we're working at speed. And so the biggest part that my takeaway from all this is that you can use this time to get ahead by developing a lot of body awareness. And by looking at yourself in the mirror, you can start to match up the differences between perception and reality. And, we talked about backstroke last week, and we talked about overreaching into the middle. And I'm sure maybe show of hands in the chat or thumbs up in the chat, those of you that have ever had a coach tell you to move the hand out a little bit, and in the video it maybe showed that you moved your hand an inch or a centimeter, but it felt to you like you had gone all the way down to 3 o'clock instead of that 11 and 1 position that we talked about. And the same thing is true here. You might feel like you're straight, but by watching yourself in a mirror, you start to learn, hey, I had that arch in my spine, or my shoulders were pulled back a little bit too much, or my head was kind of tucked down, even though it felt like it was straight. And from there, you can make those minor corrections.
Yeah. I saw a couple of questions that I want to address. One, somebody asked how long this is going to be. This is going to be roughly 45 minutes, so not terribly long. We don't want to bore you or anything like that. But if you're bored, go do something else. Also, somebody said, well, we talked about banana shapes earlier, and somebody said, well, then why do we have a banana shape in backstroke? And I actually would say you don't have a banana shape in backstroke. If you watch some of the best backstrokers in the world, they also have a very straight body position. The only reason why somebody might tell you to feel like you're swimming in an arch like this is because they want to get your core engaged and they don't want your head too far back. The other thing might be if they're telling you to sort of arch your shoulders forward just a little bit, and that's only because in backstroke, you're trying to get your shoulders to get out of the water. So in freestyle, when we recover, if the water line's right here, my shoulder and my whole arm is out of the water. If I'm just leaving my shoulders back here while I'm trying to recover, the water's going to be hitting the top of my arm. But if I shrug my shoulder forward, I can get my whole shoulder out of the water and therefore lower the amount of resistance that I have on my body as I'm recovering. So I hope that answers that question. Ben, let's talk about breathing a little bit. Yeah. So a lot of times when I'm at a clinic, I'll tell people that you want to breathe with no more than half of your face out of the water. And if you watch some of the best swimmers in the world, like Katie Ledecky, for example, she does a real, by the way, let me know in chat if you know who Katie Ledecky is. I'm willing to bet most people know who Katie Ledecky is. But when you watch her breathe, or if you've seen pictures of her breathing in freestyle, you can just barely see her mouth out of the water. And she's not just relaxing her mouth and trying to breathe with the water line right here. She's actually moving her mouth to the side of her face like this. Okay, and what's going on is she's trying to breathe with her head as low as possible. And when you do that, the water will actually kind of rotate up, or it will kind of pile up here in front of your eyes, and then it'll dip down below your mouth just a little bit and cause a little bit of a trough. The best swimmers in the world have the ability to move their mouth to the right and just breathe within that little trough. So I normally breathe to my right side. What I'm going to try to do for you, since the camera is off to my left side, is breathe to my left, and I'm going to take 4 or 5 breaths where I'm breathing to my left and I'm picking my head up to breathe. A lot of times it looks like this. So if the water line's here, people will actually breathe this way. I want to know from you guys in chat if you're one of the people that breathe with your head up, or if your coach tells you to breathe, if you breathe with your head up too much. After those 4 or 5 breaths, I'm going to try to start pulling my forehead down and trying to feel like my chin is higher than my forehead as I'm breathing. And I'm going to try to rotate my mouth like this to the left. And you should notice that not only is it harder to see when I'm actually breathing, but you should also see my hips come up to the surface as I'm breathing. So let's check that out, and Ben's going to talk you through it.
Hey, before you start that, can you hold this board in the water just vertically like this so they can see it out of that side view camera? And guys, I want you to pay attention to how the water, just bury it a little bit, piles up in the front of the board, and how it drops away in the back of the board. And that's what Tyler was talking about before in terms of how you can sneak that breath. So as your head, the top of your head right here is moving through the water, you're allowing that water to drop away behind, and now you can maneuver your mouth to get that half breath and that sneaky one goggle breathing that some coach is talking about.
So the idea is, just like Ben is explaining beautifully, you want to try to breathe back here. So as you're moving through the water, especially if you're swimming fast, you're going to get this pile up of water here, and you want to try to place your mouth right back here in this little trough so that you can get a breath, sometimes even lower than the actual side surface of the water. Somebody that I know, that I think you guys all know, whose name is Nathan Adrian, is really, really good at this.
And a great video is actually the 2016 men's 4x100 medley relay where he anchors that race. And they show some really nice underwater views where you can see how fast he moves.
Yep, so I'm going to breathe slowly so that it's easy to pick that up. But I want you to really focus on the first 5 breaths that I'm going to take, where I'm going to lift my head up and I'm going to try to exaggerate how high my head is getting while I'm breathing. And then I'm going to do 5 breaths where I'm trying to get my chin to be higher than my forehead and to keep my face as low as possible in the water. And I want you to notice, one, how much less time it takes for me to actually get my breath when I'm breathing low into and closer to the surface. And 2, I want you to notice how much higher my hips are when I'm breathing low. Here we go. A little faster. Go ahead, 110.
So notice how his hips sink down when he's breathing high. He's also not anchoring his chest because his hands are floating up to compensate for the lack of buoyancy he has to hold himself up in the water. His head's dropped back down, he's setting up a better catch. His fingertips are slicing it down, maybe keep that high elbow. He's also able to sneak that breath right there at the end. Sorry, I turned off by accident. I think we got what we need to see. You're very evident that you were reaching up for the sky just to buoy yourself up back to the surface and hold your body in place versus digging in and pointing those fingertips down.
So we talked about this last week with backstroke. So for every force there's an equal and opposing force. So if I want to swim this way, I want to push that way as often as I possibly can. So if I'm trying to pick my head up to breathe, that means at some point in time, I have to push down in order to create the force to pick my head up.
It's like being on a seesaw, right, guys? If you ever have a seesaw where you're either lighter or heavier than your friend on the other side, you're going to need a little bit more force or less force and weight to hold yourself up. And if your hands out, if your hips are low, then your hands have to compensate by creating that leverage to hold your body up, which means you're pressing force down and driving your body up. And that's opposite of the direction that we're trying to travel with.
Right. So one thing that you can do at home while you can't get in the pool to work on this is to either find, like, I think most people at home might have a kickboard, or you can even use like a plate, like a dinner plate, and you can hold it up sort of to the side and try to get used to trying to rotate your head enough to just split your face in half and look at a mirror while you do this. And then while you're standing here in this extremely awkward, funny looking position, I want you to try working on moving your mouth to the side. The best swimmers in the world are the best at doing this because they train it all the time. And you can train this at home without even having to be in the water. So work on just trying to move your mouth to the side, almost like you're closing all the parts of your mouth on the left side of your face, and just trying to make a hole in the right side of your mouth, like this, or whichever side you breathe to. When I was young, I was told to do what they call bilateral breathing, which means I breathe to this side and then I breathe to this side, and so on and so forth. But as you get older, or if you're a more proficient swimmer and you know that you only breathe to one side, which is okay, really work on whichever side is your breathing side. But if you're someone who breathes to both sides, you can actually work on both sides of those. If you don't really feel like you want to take a kickboard and do this drill, or if you don't want to take a dinner plate and do this drill, most people have a mirror in their bathroom and then they have a countertop, and you can just use that countertop as a way to sort of test whether or not your face is at halfway on that countertop. So work on that. And you can even go back and forth from, you know, being on your stomach, so to speak, and then rotating your head just enough to sneak that breath, and then get your head right back into line. You can do multiple sets of that on your own and really train that into your brain, because what we're doing, one of the reasons why I actually want to know in chat, has anybody ever heard that you should train the way you want to race? Has your coach ever told you something like that? You should train the way you want to race. And the reason why I want to know is because what's going on, or the reason why you're being told that, is actually really important and really interesting. So a lot of younger people nowadays are they take computer programming classes, and you program a computer by giving it a very specific set of instructions, and then the computer goes and does exactly what you've told it to do. Your brain works in the exact same way. So by working on these breathing drills at home, you can still program your brain so that when you get in the pool, you're going to do it correctly. If anything, the fact that we've all gotten out of the water and we've been forced to sit back and really think about our stroke is probably going to make us all better swimmers than we were before, believe it or not. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be as physically fit, or you're going to be able to swim as much as you were right before all of this started, but you're going to be able to swim with better technique. And it's the people who swim with the best technique in practice end up being the fastest at a swim meet. Okay, so let's go a little bit faster. Bring it down to like 55. So we're gonna bring the machine up to 55 seconds for 100 free, which isn't terribly fast. But what you should notice, now that the machine's starting to speed up, you should notice again from the side view, and we're gonna go to a split screen view here again, that I'm gonna take 5 breaths where my head is up, and you should see my right hand having to push down to pick my head up instead of pulling straight back. And you'll probably notice me falling away from the front of the machine as I'm doing that. After I do those 5 incorrect breaths, I'm once again going to do 5 correct breaths, and you should see how much easier it is for me to stay up close to the front of the machine.
So what Tyler was talking about earlier is something called neuromuscular patterning. And the brain's really interesting in that it sends electrical signals to the muscles to tell it what to do. And when you send the same signal over and over and over again, that cabling or myelin sheath becomes really, really thick. And so it's capable of sending a fast signal. But when you introduce a new habit or new skill, it builds a new cable. It doesn't just cut off or use that same superhighway, if you will, but it builds a new cable and it's really thin. So you've got to build that skill in over and over and over again until it rivals the first one that you had.
Okay. All right. So we talked about breathing. We talked about head position. What time is it? 3:56. All right. So we talked about breathing and head position. Okay. Now I want to know in chat, how many of you guys or girls have been told to extend your freestyle more? Now, what does that mean? Like a lot of times when I was young, at least, I was told that I need to try and flick my hand out the back more. And the way I try to talk to younger swimmers about doing exactly that is I try to tell them, instead of swimming like you're 4'2", I want you to try to swim like you're 7'2". So I'm only 6 foot. I'm only 6 feet tall on a great day when I'm hanging upside down on a backboard all night. And a lot of swimmers will ask me, well, like, you know, how am I ever going to beat somebody who's 6'6" when I'm only 6 foot? And what we're about to talk about is exactly how you can beat someone like that. So a lot of times when you have somebody who's really, really tall, they can go very fast a lot of the time just because they're bigger, but that doesn't mean they're maximizing the amount of pull time that they're getting. So what you can do is really work on trying to extend and push more past your hip than you were before. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to swim a little bit where I'm swimming really short, and I'm going to be picking up my hand sort of right here. So I'll pull, and then I'll pick my hand up right here, and then you'll notice that I'll have to swim at a higher tempo or a higher rate than I might normally. And then I'm going to switch to really trying to extend and trying to create kind of a rooster tail by accelerating my hand backwards and then flipping the water backwards and almost trying to splash the camera back here. Another way to think about it, and we talked about this last week with backstroke, but when you're pulling through the water, you don't want to just have a constant hand speed. You don't just want to have the same speed on your hand as you're pulling. You actually want to accelerate your hand towards the back of your stroke. So with freestyle, you don't want to have a constant hand speed. You want to actually accelerate your hand backwards and create that rooster tail. So I'm going to swim 5 cycles or 10 strokes where I'm swimming kind of short. You know, I'm only going to be limiting myself to about half of my normal pulling distance. And then I'll really lengthen out, and you should be able to see that not only am I going to create some of this kind of rooster tail back here, but I'm also going to be rotating more to really extend the distance between my 2 fingertips. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. It looks like 58.
So I want you guys to watch the tempo change when he starts to lengthen out his stroke. So notice how he was at almost double the tempo when he was swimming short to make up for that lack of water he was pulling. Now it's a really light finish when he still finishes all the way through. It's almost like you're trying to flick that friend that's sitting in the chair where the camera is right now. Let me go into the side view here and blow this up. Let's do that again so they can just split screen view.
Okay.
We talked through it already, but didn't have it set up.
Okay, we'll do it again. You guys are getting me to work more than I have in the last week.
So again, pay attention to the difference in the tempo here. So taking twice the amount of strokes as when you start to lengthen out, finishing so short. Flicking at the end, trying to create that rooster tail, or kind of splash that front at the finish. Another important thing to pay attention to is notice how you can see more and more of his armpit. His stroke starts to become more open. And when his armpit's open that way, it's easier to get around and set up for his next catch. Whereas in the other, when you're swimming short, you tend to get stuck up here.
Can you pause the machine for a second? So, at the University of Michigan, which is where I went to school and where I swam in college, we used to do a little bit of boxing in order to train us in how to use our rotation. And if you watch some of the world's best boxers, it's really clear that they're not powerful because they have really big arms. They're powerful because they use their rotation. It's the same thing with freestyle. So a lot of times I'll see somebody swim freestyle without moving their upper body, and they think it's just about pulling with their arms. And sure, a lot of it is about pulling with your arms, but the best freestylers in the world, I found, think of their arms in freestyle more like an anchor. So instead of thinking I need to set my hand in the water, keep my body straight, and then just try to pull backwards, they try to set their arm in the water and just anchor and then rotate their body so that they move past their anchor. So it's not about, again, it's not about trying to pull the water backwards. It's about trying to set your anchor with a nice high elbow catch, which is what we're going to talk about next, and trying to rotate your body past that anchor. And then again, on the other side, set the anchor, rotate your body past that anchor, okay? So, Ben, talk to us a little bit about the high elbow catch, why that's important, and what you see with a lot of younger swimmers as it relates to their catch.
So in freestyle, just like we talked about in backstroke, you want to create the largest pulling surface area as possible. So that means that you're not just pulling from the tip of your finger to the end of the beginning of your wrist, because that's a pretty small area. You want to create your paddle that goes from the fingertips all the way to your elbow and keep that entirely locked down so we maximize that pulling power. When you're able to move that water behind you, now you're able to travel forward. But when we see a dropped elbow, it's like taking a knife and just kind of slipping through that water. We're just slipping through at an angle versus moving that water behind us. I think Tyler's going to go grab a prop there.
So we're trying to give you a lot of different ways to work on some of these things from home while you can't get in the water. And using a chair is a great way to work on having a high elbow catch. So just like Ben is showing you, what you can do is you can take a chair, maybe have somebody sit in it, and really work on trying to get low and then trying to extend your elbow up so that this whole surface of your arm, the inside surface of your arm, is pointed backwards. So a lot of people in freestyle think that you just pull with your hands. That's not the case. So he's only able to pull on the chair with a little bit of force right here.
Hopefully he doesn't let go and this thing comes flying at me.
But now if he pulls on it with his whole forearm, it's a lot harder, a lot more difficult for me to actually resist what he's doing. It's the same thing in the water. If you just pull with your hand, you're only going to go so fast. But if you find a way to pull with this whole surface from your elbow to your fingertips by having a nice high elbow catch in the front of your pull, it's going to make you a lot more powerful, and it's going to make it easier for you to feel like you're not just pulling backwards through the water, but that you're actually anchoring with this part of your arm and you're able to rotate past it. So, Ben, what do you have as far as drills that I can do to really show the difference between having a low elbow catch with a relaxed wrist or a high elbow catch?
Let's start with a extended doggy paddle.
Okay.
And we'll extend out, set that high elbow, and then pull all the way back.
Okay.
And skate the other arm forward.
Okay. Go to split screen.
Set this back up.
So an extended doggy paddle?
Yep. So you can go head up or head down here, but I want you to watch your elbows and watch that positioning as you extend straight out. Find it from the fingertips. Now I want you to drop your elbow and watch how that changes and watch it feel for how that changes. You guys can start to see from the split screen that he's being pushed back a little bit more as he loses that catch. Now go back into a high elbow. And he starts to surge forward to the front of that bar. He's not changing his kick effort at all when he drops his elbow versus when he keeps it high.
Okay, so the only thing that I'm doing differently, when I was really struggling, I was sort of catching with what I like to call a T-Rex arm. Exactly. I was sort of catching like I had T-Rex arm. I see a lot of young swimmers swim that way. The only change you have to make, keep your hand in the same spot, just rotate that elbow up higher. You'll feel a bit of a stretch back here if you're doing this properly. But you should notice now that I'm able to pull with this whole surface instead of just my hand. So again, I just went from pulling with T-Rex arms to trying to set my anchor every time I pull. Okay, and that's something you can work on again by using that chair. Okay, let's.
Another really good drill is you can go in front of a mirror. And this sounds really silly, but if you go and you practice breathing in for 15 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever that count is, through your nose, and then trying to exhale slowly by taking 2 extra seconds. So if I inhale for 10 seconds through my nose, I want to exhale for 10 seconds through my mouth, okay? And then I want you to do the inverse of that and do 10 seconds through your mouth and 12 seconds through your nose. And while you're doing that, place your hand here on your chest and also on your belly. And I want you to pay attention to just how everything rises and falls in terms of your body position, how that impacts your buoyancy and your ability to stay engaged through that cross sport.
Okay. Let's do, think about it. Here's one drill that you guys can do at home that can sort of work on your lungs, okay? We used to call this lung buster. And what we would do is we would go 3, 5, 7, 9, and then repeat that over and over while we're swimming freestyle. So if you're at home, imagining that I'm looking at you, the mirror, you can sort of, just get your head down and maybe sneak a peek forward. Watch yourself, have that nice high elbow catch, and hold your breath while you're at home doing those 3 strokes, and practice a nice low sneaky breath. So you go 1, 2, 3, sneak a breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sneak a breath, and so on and so forth, 3, 5, 7, 9. Just to show you what that looks like in the pool, I'm going to do that here for you. I'll do 2 rounds of it, and then at the very end, after I'm done with that, I'm going to swim as fast as the machine will go, and then we're going to announce the winners of our giveaway, and then that'll be the end of the session. All right, so we're going to do 3, 5, 7, 9. You can do this drill at home, watching yourself in the mirror, just kind of I'm looking at the camera right now. I'm going to go 2 rounds of that. We'll stop, reset, and then I'm going to swim as fast freestyle as I can in this machine, and then we'll cut out of the water, and then I'm going to announce the winners of our giveaway. We're giving away 3 gift cards today, 3 gift cards. All right, 3, 5, 7, 9.
Really important when you guys are doing this, practice the best form. Think about the amount of power, even though you're moving through air. Think about the pattern that you want your arm to move with, and then the follow through that you want to have. Again, you're building that neuromuscular patterning that you're trying to carry back with you into the pool. Bump the tempo up here for him. Moved it up to a 51 under pace. Watch how his hips are moving to allow him to drive his arm through to set up his catch.
You're a jerk. He's a jerk. He sped the machine up while I was swimming. Woo! All right. So now, let's see what people are saying. All right. Cool. So now we're going to speed up the machine to as fast as it's going to go. It goes 51,
yeah.
Right? Is that what I was just doing?
That's what you were just doing.
So now I'm going to start off doing something that I used to like to do in warm-up, where I would swim for 3 or 4 strokes and then try to lengthen out as much as I could. So now that we know that the machine's going to be going about a 51-second 100-yard freestyle, I'm going to see if you guys can catch the difference when I start off maybe a little bit more relaxed, and then I'll get into maybe a little bit more of a long stroke. And what you might notice from my stroke is I have a little bit of what they call a gallop. So I kind of do a little bit of a lope where I sort of sneak my breath as I'm rotating forward. See what that looks like. After I finish that, we're going to announce the winners of our giveaway, and then we'll call it a session, all right? Here we go.
Oh, hold on.
Oh yeah, split screen.
See how he just stuck his breath and rotating quick with that? Lengthening out again here.
Woo! And I'm spent. Woo. All right, let me go back to full view. All right, guys. Well, I'm dead tired now. Tyler, the dead tired guy. I want to know in chat what you guys thought about what we just did, and give us some ideas for what you want us to cover next week. We're actually doing butterfly next week, so if you're interested in butterfly, make sure you go to our website and check out the registration page for the butterfly session next week. But I want to hear from you guys right now what you want us to cover for butterfly, all right?
Hey, there's a quick question about how is breathing different in open water?
Ooh, very good question. So, how is breathing different in open water versus pool? Now, generally speaking, it's the exact same. But what open water swimmers will do differently is what they call a dolphin breath, meaning they'll actually, instead of just breathing to their right, they'll actually sort of look up once real quick, take a breath, and then put their head back down. And that's because in open water, they don't have a line down at the bottom of the pool. They don't have lane lines on the other side of them, on either side of them. So they have to be able to see where they're going. So they do that to actually see. So most of the time, they'll just breathe like normal. You know, they might take 2 or 3 breaths like normal, and then they'll actually pick their head up and take a breath, and then get back into doing their normal stroke. And that's only to look where they're going. They call it sighting. Okay, good question. So then talk to them a little bit about some of the other things you might see in freestyle, and I'll announce the winners.
How can you improve your lung capacity?
What?
For fly, they want to talk about impact of kick tempo on timing, an ideal kick tempo, and how to find it.
Okay. All right, chat, I want to know if you guys are ready. Let me know if you guys are ready for me to announce the giveaway winners. I have them right here.
So the other things to think about in freestyle, especially at the beginning of a race, it's really tempting sometimes just out of excitement at this age to spin up your first few strokes. And I think it's really important to remember to hold water, and then go. So you're just trying to set up that feel, make sure you're extending from the fingertips, setting up that paddle from the fingertips all the way to the elbows, really having a good line, good finish before you get going.
Yeah, very good. All right, here are the winners. We have 3 winners. These 3 winners are gonna win a $50 gift card that's that you can use at fitterandfaster.com for any clinics that we have coming up this summer. We will have clinics this summer. If you win, you can use that to get either a lot of money off of your registration or a completely free registration. So I'll talk to you guys in just a second about how to enter the next giveaway. We're going to do another one next week. So if you didn't enter this week, don't worry about it. There's another one coming next week. But this week's winners were Paige Galensky. I'm probably going to mispronounce your names. I'm sorry. Paige Galensky, Cara Dio, and Genevieve B. These are, you guys probably aren't going to be able to see it. Here are your winners. Okay, here are your winners. We're going to be contacting you guys. Yeah, Paige Galensky's on here. Awesome. Congratulations, Paige. That's a $50 gift card for you and the other 2 winners. Next week, we're going to be doing the exact same thing. Okay, and what you have to do, let me find the post on our Instagram. What you have to do to give yourself the best chance of winning next week is pretty easy. Okay, you need to find this post on our Instagram. It's at Fitter and Faster Swim Tour on Instagram. You have to find this post and you have to repost it to your Instagram with the hashtag FFT Live giveaway. If you do that, you're going to be in the running to win some free stuff, and everybody likes free stuff, right? So congratulations to the winners. I'll be in contact with you personally to make sure that you get your gift card. Thank you guys for coming to watch another FFT Live episode. We have another episode coming on later today for coaches, and then we have another webinar coming on tomorrow where I'm going to be interviewing Connor Yeager, who went from being just a college walk-on to being an Olympic medalist and one of the greatest U.S. distance swimmers that we've ever seen. So make sure you sign up for that one too. And again, find this post on our Instagram, post that to your Instagram and or your Facebook with the hashtag FFT Live giveaway, and you might win a free gift card next week. So thank you very much, everybody. That's all I've got. Ben, you have anything else for us?
Yeah, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, y'all.